a memory of the disease so that when the disease comes along, it knows how to fight. So that's exactly right. So, okay, so you said you know something about some of the core vaccines.
Yeah, so like for cats, there's not any that are legally required. And then for dogs, rabies is required and DHPP is why like
No,
or no?
The law doesn't care about it.
Law doesn't care about any.
But
so
it is considered one of our kind of core vaccines.
That's what I meant, kind of.
Because there's several diseases in there, but we especially worry, in puppies we worry about the parvo. But anyway.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
In Alameda, the city of Alameda, they do require the rabies vaccine for cats.
Oh, I really thought there was nowhere in the city of Alameda.
The city of Alameda requires it. We actually have to issue a vaccine tag and send out a rabies certificate for cats in Alameda. They require their cats to be licensed. Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with cats. Cats are a little easier. So we like to give almost all cats the FERCP vaccine, which we call pretty distemper. That really has nothing to do with distemper. Distemper is just
and she brought a fecal sample, which is now in the lab.
Viral rhinotracheitis.
That's not real. That's
Khaleesi
virus and panleukopenia.
Perfect, thank you.
So it protects against those three viruses. The rhinotracheitis is basically kitty herpes.
Did you talk to her already?
Khaleesi virus is another horrible upper respiratory tract disease. Panleukopenia is
tell her what's going on and come back.
That's something we worry more about in kittens. And because it's highly contagious, and a lot of cats already carry herpes virus, that's when we recommend it even in indoor cats. Should we do it when they're kittens? We give them 2. We give it again a year later, and this is on the kitten handout. And then after that, we give it every 3 years.
Oh, I've got 2 puppy handouts.
Oh, yeah, you got the front and back of the puppy.
There's 2 pages.
Oh, I see.
That's what you're sharing.
Turn to grab a chair. I think there should be one in the reception.
Okay, I'll just look at it because I can always turn it off. So that's what we're almost always recommending. The next one on that list is the rabies vaccine, and as said, it's not.
Is there another turnout?
We're all just sharing.
Oh, we're sharing. Children party.
Yeah. If you want to sit next door, because I can print these out.
Oh, I was gonna take pictures of it.
Okay. Rabies is something that cats don't have to have legally. We do recommend it absolutely for any cat that goes outdoors. Obviously, cats that live in Alameda need it, and that's indoor and outdoor.
I think so, yeah.
It's a little bit of a debate here whether we should be recommending it for indoor cats. I usually tell people we lean towards recommending it towards for indoor cats, even if they don't live in Alameda, just in case something rabid comes into your house, a bat.
My mom saw that one time. A bat came into an unvaccinated indoor cat's house. And the bat did have rabies.
Yeah, when they come in, they often have rabies, and you can't tell if it's bitten your cat, or if the cat bites somebody, which is most likely to happen here, or if the cat gets out. So we don't feel strongly about it, but we lean slightly towards recommending it, even for indoor cats who don't live in Alameda. And then the final one on there for cats is feline leukemia. Feline leukemia is a really, really nasty viral disease. Cats, I think of it as a disease of friendly cats. They have to, in order for a cat to get feline leukemia, it has to be from its mother, or it has to share a household with a feline leukemia positive cat. They have to share water bowls or mutual grooming. Even so, we usually recommend it for cats that go outdoors, cats that live with a feline leukemia infected positive cat, or cats that go outdoors because we don't know what kind of contact they're having with other cats. We phase that out between 5 and 7 years old because experimentally, nobody has ever infected a cat over 2 years old with feline leukemia. It's really a disease of young cats. People might sometimes ask you about the FIV vaccine. FIV is a disease of unfriendly cats. It's a disease of cats that fight with each other. They get it from being bitten by an infected cat. There's a vaccine. It's terrible. Nobody uses it. Unfortunately, the only way to protect your cat against FIV is to keep them indoors.
I've lost cats at FIV before, so.
Yeah. They live a long time normally. I'm not sure what happened with your cat.
He was downhill. He started to have kidney failure, renal failure.
Yeah, they again,
basically just got to that point where he was just like, nope. And it was right when FIV first became a thing that people were aware of. And we just looked at him and we were like, yeah, you got it, dude. So we took him to vet. Yeah, he was suffering.
oh,
He's a good baby though. Well, obviously not good. He was a scrapper, but I loved him.
sometimes those are the best cats to their people. Okay, so dogs. All dogs get rabies. They get one when they're a puppy. They get it again when they're 1 year plus 4 months, a year later, and then they get it we do ours every 3 years after that. That's something we're almost always recommending without fault. Rabies is a horrible disease. We don't want dogs to get it. It's still out there. The reason we don't see it very much in dogs is because we vaccinate so much. And that's also true for distemper. So the so-called distemper vaccine actually covers 4 diseases: distemper, hepatitis, parvovirus, and parainfluenza. And parvo, once again, we worry about in young puppies mostly. Distemper, that D, is a terrible virus. I've seen it a few times. It causes gastrointestinal symptoms, it causes neurologic symptoms, and it causes respiratory symptoms. One of the 3 of those things will kill them. Usually they get a cough, and they're vomiting, and they have diarrhea, and then they have seizures and die. And so it is out there on unvaccinated animals, so that's why we give that. So we're gonna give it when they're a puppy. We're gonna give at least 2, maybe 3 or 4, depending on when they start the series. The idea is to give it to them every 3 to 4 weeks until, I'm not sure that it says on the puppy handout, until they're like 14 months old.
Can you talk a little bit about parvo? I think most people have an idea that parvo is bad, but we don't see much parvo here.
Yeah, well, my opinions on parvo are slightly different from everyone else's. And this may be above and beyond. Parvo is a virus that causes severe vomiting and diarrhea, and puppies die from it because they get so dehydrated. Even if they're hospitalized and get IV fluid, sometimes they can still die from it. It's true we don't see much of it here. I don't think there is a lot here in this area, although there's in other places. It lives in soil, in the shade. It lives in shaded soil.
It's really common in the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, it's common in New York City because
It's common in
so
San
dense.
Leandro.
Yeah.
We even go
Yeah.
a little bit that way, you know.
It's probably more common on the other side of the bridge here.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's around Lake Merritt, but it can live for a very, very long time in the dirt. So most veterinarians here, as far as I know, tell people that you shouldn't put your puppy down anywhere where you don't know every dog that's ever been there. I actually say something a little different, which is that you should not let your dog be around shaded dirt. But you can still walk them on the sidewalk, you can walk them on the sunny side of the street, stay away from tree rails. Don't write that down, because you probably shouldn't be telling people.
So I have to delete it from the video too.
It's on the video.
It's on the
No,
video.
it is true. If you know that parvo lives in shaded dirt, the sun kills it, and so it's not on the beach because it's in the sun. It doesn't live in sunny sand. So there are ways to kind of mitigate the exposure. Here we often do tell people they can walk there. The safer you go uphill, the more sparsely populated places are, and I always struggle with sort of how to say this. The generally better taking care of the dogs seem in an area, the less parvo there's going to be around there. But even then, they
like
should
areas that have more vaccinated
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say
right,
too.
more vaccinated dogs and yes, that are vaccinated as puppies. There's going to be less parvo there, sort of historically, because it can live a long time. People's backyards are totally fine. Their friends' backyards are probably fine if they've lived there. It's more about exposure to the dirt in that area and knowing who's been on that dirt, especially once again if it's shaded dirt. Distemper parvo. I honestly can't talk too much about hepatitis or parainfluenza. It's not something we see very often of that DHPP. Bordetella is called the kennel cough vaccine. People, as soon as you say kennel cough, people will say my dog doesn't go in a kennel. I always tell people that when I used to live in the suburbs, I would ask, does your dog go to the groomer or are they boarded? But here, there's so much interaction between dogs. It's so highly contagious It's not a terrible disease. It only lasts 10 days usually for most dogs, but it does have a horrible cough. And this is something we're working on a sheet about this. It has this cough that's productive that really scares people. And we had a patient the other day that confused kennel cough for vomiting. Because the dogs will, it seems like retching and then vomiting, but what they bring up is this super white foam. And so it's something really important when you're talking to people on the phone to differentiate whether are they coughing, and then what is it that they're producing. But if they describe at all a cough or like they're really putting emphasis on the retch, then you need to sort of filter out, is that a cough, and what's coming up. And if it is this super white foamy stuff, it's probably kennel cough. Anyway, it's a good vaccine to have on board, especially as other respiratory things come up. You want to hopefully, dogs that get multiple respiratory viruses at once are going to get sicker than dogs that are protected at least against kennel cough, which we have a good vaccine for.
Isn't it kind of the equivalent to like pertussis in children?
I know, pertussis
like-
in children is
Like
syndrome.
a whooping cough.
Pertussis in children I don't think that's
It's
I
not
don't think
viral.
That describes a specific etiology at all. I think pertussis is just about coughing kids and they don't know what causes it. That would be like
Gotcha.
what we're supposed to be, when we see a coughing dog in here that we think is contagious, we're no longer supposed to call it kennel cough because there's a bunch of different causes. We're supposed to call it infectious tracheal bronchitis. I think that's what pertussis is. I think they're just saying infectious tracheal bronchitis.
Gotcha. I've just
Um,
heard that like analogy before, but that makes total sense.
Yeah. So leptospirosis is the next vaccine on there. Leptospirosis is a bacterial disease that is found in standing water that has been infected, although you don't have to necessarily say this, with wildlife urine or rat urine. So it's kind of everywhere around here. It's in the city and it's out of the city. We don't see it very often. We tend to see it more when it rains, and it's been so not rainy lately. The few times we've had it have been the rainier winters, I feel like, the few times we've seen it here. Although there was recently an outbreak in Los Angeles, even though it's presumably still dry there, or it was a month ago. I'm not sure what that was about. So we tend to recommend that for dogs that may drink, unless the person says, my dog would never drink strange water. We tend to recommend it. I did have a person tell me that their dog got it from somewhere in the city, out in this neighborhood, and died before it was treatable. It causes liver and kidney failure, and it's contagious to people through urine. So it's nasty. It is treatable, but sometimes it's so bad that they, have organ failure before it gets treated.
And you said it's contagious to people?
It's contagious to people, which makes it particularly nasty through the dog's urine. That vaccine is two vaccines when they're a series of two when they're young, or the first time they get it, a series of two, and then it's yearly after that. And then there's flu vaccine, which in general we're not recommending because there hasn't been flu around here for a very long time. Flu in dogs is not like flu in people. It doesn't come every season. There were these sporadic outbreaks. Once again, there's maybe recently an outbreak of dogs in Los Angeles. But unless dogs are boarding, and even then only maybe if the boarding facility requires it, are we really recommending it? Or if people are really like that. That one is a series of two when they first get it, and then it's a year later. If they are more than 2 months past that year, if they're more than 14 months out from the last one, they have to do the series of two again. That's something important to remember with that one.
And the timing is different too, right? Isn't it 2 to 4 weeks for the booster?
I usually say 2 to 4 weeks for most boosters.
Okay, I thought the others were 3 to 4.
Oh.
I don't know.
I think you can do 2 to 4 weeks for almost all boosters.
Gotcha.
So we, one rule maybe not everybody follows, but we don't like to give too many killed vaccines together. And for you guys drawing up vaccines, the way that I think about that is the vaccines that you have to mix together are live vaccines, and the vaccines are only one vial, so flu, lepto, rabies. We don't like to give those together necessarily. We like to split those up because maybe those are more likely to cause reactions. There's a really, really great study that Banfield did where they looked at like 10,000 patients or something, vaccine reactions are they prove that vaccine reactions are extremely rare. The incidence goes up slightly. It's sort of percentages of percentages, but the smaller the dog is and the more vaccines you're giving at once. So that's why we do a lot of splitting up vaccines here. Because we know that the risk increases as you split vaccines. We often give the rabies by itself because if they do have a reaction and we've given something else, we don't know was it to the rabies. And that rabies is so important. We want to know what happens when we give them just rabies, especially when they're young and little. If they have a good history of not having a problem with the rabies, then we might give it with other vaccines later. But mostly when they're puppies, we split the rabies off.
Can I add something about rabies?
Yes.
So the city, you'll hear clients sometimes ask about titers because they want to exempt their dog from the rabies vaccine. But the city does not care. The city doesn't care if your dog is fully protected according to the blood work. The dog has to get the rabies vaccine.
Yeah.
And unless you can prove that the dog has had a specific reaction to the rabies vaccine,
and it has to be severe. It has to be quite severe and almost kill them. There's almost no
They're
way.
so strict about it.
So that used to be her job to decide whether or not. And there's very few incidences where they will
allow an exemption.
Yeah, from a rabies vaccine.
Yeah. So that's also part of the reason why they split it up too, because they will want documentation, like to know it was this specific vaccine.
Mm-hmm. So we mostly do that when they're puppies. If we're fine with the one when they're puppies, usually the next time we're giving it with the December and the Bordetella. But we generally here we do try to avoid giving lepto with flu or rabies.
Yeah, that's on our little thing when we book. Don't book those together. So.
Oh, great. I think that's everything. If you guys, there's good information there about on the handout about the puppy schedule as far as boosters. I might not have really talked about that. The kitty rabies is every year. Oh, so the kitty rabies and the leukemia are every year because those vaccines are particularly non-adjuvanted. Adjuvanted vaccines have extra sort of irritating chemicals in them that help extend the immunity. And cats used to, haven't seen it in a very long time, but they used to get cancers in the vaccine sites. Oh. And so we switched over to these non-adjuvanted ones. The downside is you have to give them more often. So you have to give the leukemia once a year, at least until they're 5 or 7 if they go outdoors, and the rabies you have to give, you're giving that that's why we're giving that yearly as well. It's also the reason why we give vaccines, we try to give vaccines as low down in their leg as possible.
Okay.
Really, because it used to be when we would see those tumors, the only treatment of choice was to amputate their leg. And so you want them, if they're going to get a tumor, you want them to get a tumor here and not here. Because you actually do have a treatment option.
It's one of the reasons why we don't give the Defensor 3 vaccine to cats, because that one's adjuvanted, right? The one that we give for dogs.
Oh, the rabies.
Yeah, the rabies.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a specific reason why we have the vaccines that we have at this practice. It's very intentional. So clients who go to VIP or to any of those vaccine clinics don't have that specific curation by a veterinarian.
Among different
that
brands,
way.
When Anya and I used to work at the practice together, we would see so many reactions to rabies.
Lepto too.
Yeah, because it was the brand of vaccines that they used tend to cause more reactions, and so vaccine reactions here I would say are still very, very rare.
I probably have seen 2.
Yeah,
in the last 8 years.
They're most likely ones might be that they have a little swelling at the site. That's the most common. But like as far as severe sort of anaphylactic ones where they come back swollen.
Their face looks like they've gotten a bee sting.
No,
it's cute, but also really sad. Your appointment's here. Lindsay just came in.
Any questions?
No, that was great.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Thank you, Dr. Parton.
Thank you so much.